Yes, I know. All right, so this is Daisy, this is Violet, and this is the roadmap to success. These are great dogs, but Violet is definitely the more assertive of the two dogs. Daisy's a little bit more relaxed, and maybe, I don't say insecure, but maybe not as confident. Yes, I'm going to hold you here so you don't fall down. Now, we went through, I think the reason that the dogs are behaving the way they are is because they don't really have a lot of rules and structure. And so the very first thing we went over were rules to incorporate. Rule number one, not being allowed in the furniture without an invitation for at least 30 days or as long as the problem's going on. After 30 days, allowed in the furniture, but only with an invitation. And only for good behavior. And only on the same level, not on the back of the couch. Now, if one of the dogs starts barking or doing something inappropriate when on the couch, you have to get down. To have them get down, we're going to put our hand behind their butt, push them firmly to the edge so they feel like they're teetering, wait for them to jump off, then reach over and pet them if we can. Say the word off. So we created a command word off. Yes. Let me see. Other rules, if a human is eating, the dog should not be allowed within 7 feet of the human who is eating. We're going to use the escalating consequences to disagree with the dogs. For the dining room area, I would say the dogs are not allowed to be on the carpet around the dining room when food is present. The rest of the time they can come and go as they please. Now, something I forgot to go over, a couple things I forgot to go over that I'll go over in this video. When we learn things as humans, we learn in a classroom environment, and we learn in individual modules or short sections. And we're encouraged we use the classroom environment, so we're encouraged to play around and try different things and possibly fail, but because it's a classroom environment, it's a safe place to try things out. This is how we teach ourselves, and we teach it in small individual steps. First grade, we learn addition, then second grade, we have subtraction, and so on. Well, that's how we train dogs, and that's how we teach ourselves, but when it comes to dog behavior, for some reason, it never occurs to us to actually train the dogs how we want them to behave. So if your dog is misbehaving, ask yourself, first of all, have I taught the dog how it should behave? If I haven't, then I need to teach that. What I do is I recreate the situation as realistically as possible, but keeping in mind what the dogs are capable of doing. If having a whole bunch of people over for a dinner party is too much for the dogs, I might just invite a friend that I haven't seen in a while to come over and just say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, bought a bottle of wine, dog guy said I need to practice having people over anyways, you want to come over and drink some wine? Sure. So the person comes over, instead of actually doing the regular meal, maybe you just set the table like you're going to eat a meal, but you just take a piece of roast beef and microwave it for about 20 to 30 seconds. That smell is going to be very attractive to the dogs. When we're eating a real meal, let me get you up here. When we're eating a real meal, we're hungry. We're thinking about eating food. So when the dogs come up and are being a nuisance, you're not being a nuisance, then we kind of get frustrated about it. And because we're doing it in the moment. So what we do is we set the table, we get the roast beef out, we microwave it, we sit down at the table, and then if the dogs come onto the carpet, we're able to use the third escalating consequence, or the first hiss, when they're approaching. And once they approach, if they don't, we use the second and the third consequence to move them away. We help them practice this over and over. Here, I'll get you up here. It's a little bit better. This is a little bit narrow of a chair. That's okay. And we practice this over and over until the dog understands that I'm not allowed to be on the chair. And usually it is by laying down and moving away. Once they've accomplished that, then we actually serve the real meal. Now the dog has had a warm-up and practice, and we've taught it each step along the way not to come onto the carpet. Maybe the next time we do it, we might have 2 people come over, and then 3 people. So we're gradually going to make it gradually more and more progressively closer to what we're going to do, eventually the real world situation. Then when we actually have our dinner party, the dogs know how to behave during the meet and greet, during the cocktail hour, during the hors d'oeuvres, during the actual serving of the real courses. And so we've taught the dogs how to behave. So anytime you have a dog that has a behavior problem, ask yourself, have you taught it how to behave? If not, recreate the situation, remove as many elements as you need to in order to make it easy for the dogs to do the result that you're looking for, then practice that result over and over again while gradually adding in more and more elements until you get back to the real world situation. That's quite a breathing thing you got going on, yes. All right, let me see, other rules we went over, the dog should sit before we let them in or out of the door. We go to the door, we say sit once. If the dogs don't sit, I walk away for 1 minute. Don't wait at the door standing, go somewhere and sit down. When you stand, you look like you're waiting or transitory. Sitting down looks like you're going to be staying for a while. Wait, tell Siri, give me a 60-second timer. At the end of 60 seconds, go back to the door, say sit again, tell them. If they don't sit, then walk away for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, next time for 8 minutes. As soon as one of them sits, open the door and let that dog out. And if they both sit, then let them both out. But this way we're controlling a resource and we're only rewarding the dog with access for when they do what we want them to do. If you don't do it, I'm not going to chew you out, I'm not going to punish you, I'm not going to correct you. You just don't get what you want. So this way we're using leverage and motivation to get the dogs to do what we want them to do. Let me see, other rules, when we're cooking food in the kitchen, the dog should not be allowed in the kitchen. When we're preparing food, as we have in the feeding video that I'm going to send to you, they can't be in the area directly around the food. We're going to make them eat one dog at a time, and they're going to have to wait for the human to eat first. All right, so those are some examples of rules. We used the martingale collars, which I'm going to leave here, and I put a special twist along the leash, and I have a video that we're going to post with the 5 rules for a structured walk. So once we did this, the Guardian had a great, said it was a lot easier to control the dogs. We had a shorter leash and a lot more control. We met a couple dogs in the walk. A dog was barking. I was able to get them to sit right in front of the dog's house and pay close attention to me. A lot of it was because we worked on the focus exercise. You guys have good focuses. Yes, I know, it's hard. All right, I'll let one of you down. I'm gonna let you down. And you're gonna get all the lap and a little treat. That'll make her happy. Okay, so let me see. So the other thing, one of the other things I didn't go over was something called passive training. Passive training is simply waiting for the dog to do something that you want them to do and then rewarding them for doing it. So if every time that Violet here comes next to me, I'm going to pet her and say, come. If every time she sits, I'm going to pet her and say, sit. Every time she lays down, I'm going to pet her and say, crash or down or whatever the word is. So I'm going to let the dog do the thing voluntarily. I'm not asking the dog to do it. I'm just simply rewarding them when they do. So when the dog comes to you, pet her and say, come, unless they're jumping up on you. Sit. So I kind of manipulated her there, but that's more petting with a purpose, which I'll talk about in a sec. But for passive training, anything your dogs do on a regular basis that you want them to do, make sure you reward them for doing it. Spot. That's basically passive training for this, as well as for the dog food, as you'll see in the video for feeding them. So passive training, just make sure anytime they're doing something you want them to do, that you pay attention and reward them as much as possible. Then the dogs will start emulating and repeating that behavior. Instead of jumping up on you, they'll come and sit down in front of you. That leads me to petting with a purpose. Instead of petting the dogs for no reason, ask the dogs to sit first. Sit. Sit. Pet her on her chin and say the word sit. And this way, not good sit, not good dog, just the word sit. So the dogs transition from, I can't tell the humans what to do anymore because I tell them nothing happens. But if they tell me to do something and I do it, they hook me up, they reward me, they give me a treat, they give me a scratch behind the ear. After a while, what will happen is the dog will come up to you and say, I'm going to prepay for some attention by sitting in front of you to ask ahead of time. So either they do something that you tell them to do, changing their state. If they're already sitting, ask them to sit over here. If they're sitting, ask them to lay down and then pet them under the chin and say it. Or if they come and prepay for it, then make sure you do acknowledge that, because now you're training them to do a new behavior. And we want them to do those new behaviors. Yes, good job of correcting. Remember the hissing sound, we want to use it before the dog does the wrong thing. The escalating consequences, so there are 4 of them. The first thing is we hiss 1 time per incident, again, before the dog does the wrong thing. Only hiss once and have 10 versions of your hiss. Meet the dog's energy level with the intensity of your hiss. Rule number 2, or consequence number 2, stand up abruptly. Turn to face them. And keep pivoting, keep that dog in front of you until it's stationary. As soon as it stops, stands, sits, lies down. Take 2 steps backwards. Left foot, or right foot, left foot. Pause 1 second, then go back to doing what you're doing. The third consequence is marching briskly at the dog until it turns sideways or greater. The only time that we wouldn't do this is if the dog is sideways in a designated no dog zone. Like if I'm eating some food and the dog's right here and I walk towards it, turn sideways, well, it still shouldn't be within 7 feet of me while I'm eating. That's something else I'd like the Guardian to get in the habit of doing. Again, not walking around the dogs. If the dog's in your way and it's standing, you walk through the dog. The dog needs to learn my job is to defer away from the humans, not the other way around. The fourth consequence is putting the dog on a leash timeout. I attach the leash to the dog's collar and I step on it about 2 feet away. The dog might throw a temper tantrum and protest. If they do, that's fine. It's a good way to burn energy. When they get done, they will sit down as far away as the leash will allow. It will be a tense leash. I take the foot that's on the leash and I slide it towards the dog as soon as it sits down. I do not tell it to sit down. I do not tell it to lie down. When it sits, it's saying I'm challenging you less. I slide the foot and the leash. Then a minute later, sometimes several minutes later, it will lay down. When it lays down, it's calm. Then I take my foot very subtly off the leash. I don't tell the dog, good job. I don't pet it, and I don't detach the leash. Any 3 of those things tells the dog we're done, it's going to go back to trying to get your food or doing whatever it was before. Instead, we wait for a minute or 2 of it being calm. If it is, then we take the leash off. Or if it doesn't, if it starts going back to try to take the person's food as it runs by, we can step on the leash and reapply the consequence. On the walk, the guardian, when we were on the walk, we ran across a dog on the other side of 12th Street. And that dog was not a fan of other dogs, so it was a good dog for actually to practice on. Now, both of these guys, and I like how they're both laying on the spot, by the way. So both of these dogs started pulling. Now, if you let the dog pull and lunge towards the other dog, you're going to accomplish 2 things. It's going to freak out the other dog, because it doesn't look like you have control of your dogs, and they're ramping themselves up and amping themselves up. So what I would do is, if you recognize the dog is walking across the street, we kind of got caught in a little bit of a funky situation when we were in the street when they started pulling. That's not safe. So ideally, if we're walking down a block and we see the dogs at the end of the another dog at the end of the block, and the dogs start to pull, stop. This would be a great time to do the focus exercise once they have got it. But don't use your focus exercise until you got the 20 seconds inside the house, front yard, backyard, and on walks without any other dogs around. That's the time to start using it once you've achieved those. If you start using it too early, you won't get the right technique down, or they won't give you full intensity, and it'll end up stopped working. So don't use it until you've gotten the focus down properly. But if you let the dogs pull you towards the other dogs, they're going to get more and more ramped up, and the other dog's reaction is going to get them worked up as well. So as soon as they start to pull at all, put any tension on the leash, stop, tell them to sit. Wait for them to settle down. When they settle down, then we start walking towards the man. You might only take 1 or 2 steps. If that other dog's walking towards you, you probably won't walk at all, because they start getting closer to you. This is where it might be helpful to have another friend who has a dog that can be in on it with us. This would be a dog that they don't know. So we arranged to have somebody coming down there, put our Bluetooth thing on, or add earbuds so we can talk to the people. Just say, oh, stay right there. So they stop, and we can control that dog, and we can control the experience for the pugs. That way the pugs understand, if I try to pull and take and be assertive about it, the human's going to stop. But if I walk nice and calmly next to the human, then we can approach the other dog. The technique that I outlined in the video above, where we talked about the focus exercise, will give you the ability to redirect their attention. After a while, you'll get them to not even care that the other dog's around, because they're looking at you for the treat. Let me see, something else we did, the dogs were very excited for the leash. Now, we didn't film this, but the guardian, one of the guardians could go over it with the other, where basically, for dogs, whoever's in front is in charge. So as he got up and walked to where the cupboard was, where the leash was, as soon as the dogs walked in front, he turned around and went and sat down at the kitchen table. Waited for the dogs to settle down, and then he got up and repeated the process. We probably did this 15 or 20 times. The key to this is to do this at times when you're not planning on going for a walk at all. So if we're thinking about going for a walk and the dogs protest or they're excited, we get frustrated. But the dog's energy inside the house is the energy they're going to carry with them on the walk. If you don't address it inside, you're not going to have a productive walk. So what I do is I practice going towards the cupboard, and as soon as the dog walks in front of me, I turn and sit down. And then that'll take several times, but eventually the dogs will understand I have to stay behind him, or they just actually camped out on the table, just laid there. Next step is going, open the cupboard and picking up the leash. As soon as they heard the lick picking up, they jumped up and they were excited. And remember, excited is not happy. So we're going to keep on stopping anytime they show any excitement. They're circling around, they're breathing heavy, they're jumping up, they're barking. Eventually we'll get to the point where we can open up, take out that cupboard, take the leashes out, tell them to sit, and then we attach the leashes. They stay calm, we go to the door. Remember, the humans need to go through the door first, and then the dogs follow. And now we have this sort of energy, well, not quite this, but pretty close to this, on the walk. It's going to make it much more enjoyable for the walk. I also changed the rigging that we were using. The Guardian was using a collar that I don't like to use, so we fitted them up with martingale collars. They both did great with them. Did you take Violet's off, by the way?
I don't think so, but it might be attached.
Violet took hers, oh, okay, so it might be attached to the leash. But basically, these guys have a thick neck and a small head. Martingale collars are also called a no-slip collar. It'd be a great collar for them to wear because it'd be nice and loose, but when you pull the leash, it pinches, or it doesn't pinch, but it collapses down, and they can't pull it off their head, so they won't be able to wiggle out of it like they can for the every other collar, which is why the Guardian uses the collar that I'm not a fan of. Okay, so let me see, what else? Passive training, petting with a purpose, the escalating consequences, feeding them, make sure the humans are eating first, and then the focus exercise, the counter conditioning. God, I remembered, thanks for reminding me, Violet. So for the counter conditioning, for the doorbell, what we're doing is we're taking a treat, we're letting the dog chew on the treat first. While the dog has gotten a nibble or two in, then we ring the doorbell. Now, and when we do this, we want to do this in different parts of the house. But when the doorbell is about to finish, pop whatever is remaining in the treat into the dog's mouth. So they only hear the doorbell ringing when they have this high-value treat in their mouth. After enough repetitions, the dogs will associate when the doorbell rings, that means I get a treat. Instead of barking at the door, they're just looking for their treats. If you have problems figuring out how to do that, just text me or call me. I can send you a link to a video where I've done this with a lot of other clients. You can watch how I did it. The focus video that we have above, the dogs weren't as responsive as I would like. Usually dogs are really into it. Make sure when you're doing it, our knees are we're gonna be too tall for the dog. So what I do is I kind of push my legs out like this. See how that lowers my knees? Now with this sort of chair, you actually need to go on the edge. So I can actually the idea is to have the dog's head even with where your knees are. Let me see. Recreating situations is going to be the key though. So if you know the dog's going to go on the couch when you go in the next room, pretend like you're doing it, go around the corner and then just pause and be ready and then just pop right around. Some people will actually set up a security camera or Skype their phone to their iPad, put the phone here facing there and then leave go in the kitchen, and then they try to go on the couch. You can make the hissing sound without even seeing you or come into the room if you need to. All right, now we did not get a chance to go over the door exercise. I think based on what I've seen with the dogs, I think a lot of it is they're just so overexcited and they weren't having a lot of rules and structure, so they got the impression that they were in charge. It's gonna take about a month for you to get in the habit of practicing all these things, so just be really strict about it for a month. And maybe try to write down, how long it takes to do certain things. Sometimes it's helpful to know see the progress if you have it journaled or written down. But at the 2-week mark, usually people, that's great. She came over and she's asking if she can get on the couch, but she's not jumping up. At the 2-week mark, people tend to lose focus. So when you get to 2 weeks, celebrate yourself. Make yourself a little bit of a dinner or something. But practice these things whenever possible. Practice eating food with them out of the kennel so you can practice correcting them or do the dry run like I talked about earlier. If you want to work on teaching them a better heel or the door exercise or anything else, give me a shout. Let me know. I'm right across Lincoln. I can be here at any time. All right. Well, Violet. Come here, sweetheart. We need a dog for the end of this. Sit. We're going to get 2 dogs.
Nowadays he's awake.
Yes. Now sit. Don't let them climb up on you like this. If I push her away, I'm just redirecting her with the treat. Sit. Sit. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it. Perfect.